Like many of you, I have been thinking about the whole assassination attempt. And yes, it was an assassination attempt. We can all just own the facts and say it against Donald Trump from several days ago. And I want to offer a few thoughts here. I want to offer a few things. One is a path forward. Another thing I want to offer is simply facts and truth. I want to offer why this happened and why we should react a certain way and who we can be unified with as we move forward. And then I just want to give a few closing thoughts. So with that, let's get into this video. After this tragic and destructive event, we have seen many people call for unity. That seems to be the buzzword, both right, left, and center. However, I think that we really need to specify who we can be unified with and what that unification has to look like. What can we be unified under? What causes can we pursue together and be unified in pursuit of those causes? And who can we actually join arms with? Because it doesn't help to just call for unity when there are people who you truly cannot be unified with. And this is not new in American history. We saw this happen in the 1800s, in the American Civil War. Did we want unity? Yes, but there was a time when there was a group that we could not be unified with. The North and the South could not be unified. They tried to put aside their differences politically, and I hope that that is where it can end today in the 2020s, where we can solve this politically and culturally. But then there came a time when a total political, cultural, and even geographical and militaristic split had to happen. I am not advocating for that. I am not saying I hope it comes to that. As a matter of fact, exactly the opposite. I'm saying that in order for us to right the ship, so to speak, in order for us to avoid the sins of the past and the mistakes of the past, we must solve the problems that brought us to this point in the first place. Calls for blind unity without solving the underlying issues are not going to help. Now, the problem with seeking outright unity with no qualifiers is intrinsically tied to the question I raised in the beginning of this video, which is, why did this happen in the first place? What were the contributing factors? In short, you can't keep saying that your opposition is the literal second coming of Hitler and the Nazis. You can't keep turning a blind eye to or outright inciting and supporting violence, as the left has done, without at least fanning the flames and opening the door to political violence like what we just saw attempted against Donald Trump and his followers in a sadly lethal encounter. What exactly am I talking about? Well, as any of you who know me know, I always come with receipts. So let's look at some of these. Tweets and statements from some of our highest left-wing elected officials and party leaders and celebrities calling Trump Hitler, comparing him to Hitler, calling him a fascist, a threat to our very country and democracy itself. Look at these tweets. I could literally spend hours feeding you tweets like this from leading left-wingers culturally and politically. Then we have the obviously biased mainstream media and their spin jobs. Let's not forget that in 2020, when we saw literal cities burning, I saw this firsthand and went to clean up Pittsburgh after it had been violently attacked and set ablaze. We had people like CNN and MSNBC saying that these were mostly peaceful protests and giving passes to the violence. Let's not forget that we had leading left-wing celebrities and political officials, including our sitting vice president, pay to bail out destructive and dangerous rioters during the 2020 election cycle. Let's not forget that we had left-wing leaders like Jerry Nadler saying that these violent riots were a myth. We cannot sweep under the rug the fact that elected Democrats outright denied Secret Service protection to RFK and attempted to strip Secret Service protection mere days earlier from Donald Trump before he was attempted to be assassinated. One of the most popular chants during the BLM and Antifa riots of 2020 was that silence equals violence. White silence is violence. We cannot have amnesia about the fact that about half of Democrats, when polled, wanted to fine and or imprison anyone who even questioned the mandated vaccine during the Biden years. And then again, we have cultural and political leaders like Joe Biden, Maxine Waters, Johnny Depp, Madonna, all left-wingers outright inciting and endorsing violence. All of these are going to be posted on this screen as screenshots, as news articles, and also as a montage at the end of this video for you to see for yourself. Finally, we have the most successful and large and long-lasting insurrection of the 2020 election cycle, which took place in Chaz/CHOP, where we saw armed left-wing militants take over American soil, claim it as their own autonomous zone, erect a barrier with borders patrolled by armed individuals for days and weeks on end. We have not seen traitors claim American soil in anything close to that since the time of the Civil War and the Confederacy. But of course, they were left-wingers, so the media swept it right under the rug. In short, as a cultural movement and a political party, you do not get to incite violence, ignore violence, deny the very existence of the violence which you supported and incited financially and through your rhetoric. You don't get to call your opposition literal Hitler and Nazis. You do not get to target them, imprison them, and support your own insurrectionists. You do not get to do those things and then pretend that you had nothing to do, no contributing factors to the political violence that happens against your opposition. As a matter of fact, it makes perfect sense from a logical standpoint. If people actually believe that Donald Trump is Hitler and that his followers are Nazis, of course they are going to be violent against them because that is how Americans have historically dealt with Nazis. We went to Europe and North Africa to kill and stop Nazis. So if you're going to call anyone that name, you are directly implying the next step, which is severe action. Onto the topic of unity, the question then pops right out at your face. How can there be unity when these issues and contributing factors have not been owned, addressed, and apologized for? As a result, I actually drew up a little something that looks like a left-wing leader's apology, which I would accept, and after which I would absolutely seek a sense of American unity with them because I would see it as a real, genuine olive branch. It would have to be something akin to this. Yesterday, an attempt was made on the life of Donald Trump. I want to wish a speedy recovery to Donald Trump and everyone who lost and was injured during those awful events. Regrettably, my very own party and cultural movement has wrongfully titled our opposition as fascists, dictators, threats to democracy. We have compared them to Hitler and the Nazis and have said that they are a threat to our very existence. We have both encouraged and ignored violence. I participated in this. I got sucked into a very hyper-partisan, extremely heated cultural environment. I am sorry. I still believe in my policies, but we absolutely need to dial down the temperature and the tone of this rhetoric, which myself and my party have contributed to. We have called Donald Trump Hitler and a fascist dictator. He is none of the above. Hitler needed to be killed. We all agreed on that as Americans. Donald Trump does not need to be killed. An apology similar to that one is the only way that we could then truly move forward pursuing what has been called by our leaders and our content creators and our influencers American unity. Because, see, without that apology, there's no actual recognition of what has been done wrong. There's just political grandstanding and self-preservation, and that does not tie us to unity. As a matter of fact, it brings us away from unity because it's so phony. Most of us learned in grade school that a real apology entails two things: acknowledging what you did wrong and changed action. Neither of these seem to be contributing factors to the apologies and calls for unity that we see from the left. So this brings us to our next question. What can we as Americans who genuinely want the best for our future and to unite with as many people as we possibly can, what can we unite under? What is our shared goal? Tragically, we cannot unite with the people who continue to contribute to the things that led to this violence. We cannot unite to the people who refuse to own exactly what they did leading up to this violence. That's like an abusive spouse asking you for unity but refusing to change. We also absolutely cannot unite with those who have been celebrating what happened and or wishing more death and destruction on conservatives and on anyone who supports Donald Trump. People like this, again, cited on screen. Here I think there is a quick and worthwhile side tangent to go on, and it's simply this. Many have justifiably said, yeah, but there has been violence on the right, and there has been reckless and even possibly violent rhetoric shared by some on the right. That's true. That has happened, and that is wrong. However, I do think that it is worth pointing out here that when we look at the amount, the severity, and the collusion of powers with things like media, political power, and cultural power all feeding into the same nasty system, one side, the left, is clearly and overtly much worse and much more guilty than the other side, the right. That does not justify any wrong that happens at the hands of anybody. Everyone should own their very own actions. But I don't think that both sidesing this and pretending that both sides are just as bad is honest or helpful for anyone. This would be kind of like saying, well, the Allies committed war crimes in World War II, which they factually did. The Allies firebombed civilian targets in World War II, which they factually did. And thus, we need to both sides this, and we can't really choose between the Axis powers and the Allied powers as to who's right or who we ought to have supported. See, that's the wrong conclusion. We can both sides it to a point and say, yes, people are flawed. Yes, every movement has someone bad in it once it gets to a certain size. And yes, bad things happen and we should all own them to the extent that it's within our power. That's fine and that's true and that's accurate. But pretending that the right is as culpable or as contributory as the left to the political violence that we see is just absolute nonsense. With that being said, I believe that there still are good people on the right, in the center, and yes, even on the left, who have owned their own imperfections and the imperfections of those who they generally agree with on policy. I believe there are people across the board who want to unify with their neighbors, their communities, and their families, even those who disagree with them on politics and policy. And this is where I think a lot of personal wisdom and maturity comes into play. That is where you need to decide and try to vet who those people are and who you can genuinely have a good faith conversation and ultimately relationship in a unified fashion with. Lastly, of course, as a Christian, I believe there is something that, even though many would deny it, we all are unified under. That is, of course, our need for forgiveness, justification, and a Savior through Jesus Christ. Now, even that, sadly, will be controversial, though. There will be people who spit that from their mouth, who want nothing to do with that. And again, as a Christian, that does not mean that you should stop extending a Christ-like love to them. Now, something that I believe often gets misunderstood is that Christ-like love does not mean that you have to agree with, support, or endorse evil. Not at all. You can love someone as a human and as a valuable soul and a piece of creation without embracing or supporting their destructive beliefs or actions, and in some extreme cases, even violent evil actions. With that said, in the interest of accurate reporting of history, here is the montage I promised of Democrats stoking the flames of conflict and in some cases directly endorsing violence. Have a great day.
In our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed.
Anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
This warehouse was built by free
office. We went downstairs and
this subway had its register broken into. Starbucks was hit real hard, and this individual, this woman was just telling us that her store was hit hard. Do you want to say anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a shame, you know, our beautiful city just vandalized is what I would say, the word that I would use. And I'm a small business owner, you know, just like Sergio and us here, versus the pandemic, and you know what I mean?
Most importantly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, Trump is a threat to this nation.
There's violence across the whole country. Do you disavow the violence from Antifa? That's happening in Portland right now? That's
a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
Sir, there's videos everywhere online. There's fires and riots. They're throwing fireworks at federal officers. DHS is there. Look online.
Don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
I'm going to punch him out. This is my mom. I would pay this. You've been waiting for this, for trespassing on the Capitol grounds. I'm going to punch him out, and I'm going to go to jail, and I'm going to be happy.
Get up in the face of some Congress people.
This is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. And for those of you who are soldiers, make them pay.
And I might just kill ISIS with the same ice pick that I murdered Donald Trump in the same night with.
Missouri State Senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I'm at the point where I want to burn the White House down.
We got f***ing Rick Trump out of that office right over there. F***ing pull him out that Nah, we ain't about to wait until the next election. We about to go get that motherfucker.
People need to start taking to the streets.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives. And unfortunately, there's plenty to go around.
They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after.
You got to be ready to throw a punch. Well, you have to be ready to throw a punch.
Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
That I thought he should have punched him in the face.
Feel like punching him.
I'd like to take him behind the gym if I were in high school. If we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him. No, I wish we were in high school, I could take him behind the gym.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Take him out now.
Okay. When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
We're going to go in there, we're going to...
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
Elections and do away with opposition and do away with a free press. And you could see it in countries where, well, Hitler was duly elected.
That's right.
Right? And so all of a sudden, somebody with those tendencies, those dictatorial, authoritarian tendencies would be like, oh, okay, we're going to shut this down. We're going to throw these people in jail. And they didn't usually telegraph that. Trump is telling us what he intends to do.
We need to listen.
What, in your view, constitutes the primary threat to freedom and democracy at home?
Donald Trump.
Let's deal with Hitler, okay?
I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that. I mean, that is Mussolini, Hitler-like language.
Trump's affinity for Hitler was always covered under an umbrella of his stupidity.
Echoing Hitler's words.
Listen to this. Well, Hitler was duly elected.
Right. Echoing the hateful rhetoric of Adolf Hitler.
I refuse to live under Donald Trump's reign again. I refuse to risk our democracy.
What would a second Trump term in the White House mean for the rule of law in our country?
it would be the end of democracy.
Anybody that votes Republican and doesn't understand you're voting for the end of democracy.
That's the kind of language Hitler used in Mein Kampf.
Got Vermin and Hitler and Mussolini.
That's a horrifying clip. That's a fascist clip.
Just going full on Hitler.
If Trump wins, it would be the end of democracy in the United States.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face.
Punch some people in the face!
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
That's it right there. Make a wish, Canada. Don't miss Trump next time.
Then let me know who I gotta vote for to keep Hitler out the White House. That's it, I'm done. Oh, and by the way, if it's Biden Tacoma, I'm gonna vote for Biden Tacoma. I don't even really particularly like the guy. A lot of his policies, don't like him. He's not Donald Trump, right? Yeah, Hitler, White House, we keeping him out.